I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to post here, but life has a way of humbling you. I, 32 am, have been with my girlfriend, 29F, for almost 4 years. At the beginning, everything felt easy, like we just clicked. She was smart, ambitious, and had this ability to make a crowded room feel like it was just the two of us. I honestly thought I had hit the jackpot. But looking back, I realize I ignored the first cracks when they showed up. About a year ago, she started working late more often. At first, I didn't question it. Her job in marketing was demanding, and I was proud of her drive. But it wasn't just late nights. It was the way she started guarding her phone like it was a second heartbeat. She used to leave it on the counter without a thought, but suddenly, it was face down, silent, and never out of reach. I'd ask casually, "Who keeps texting you this late?" And she'd brush it off with a smile and say, "Work stuff, don't worry." And like an idiot, I didn't push further. I trusted her. Or maybe I just didn't want to know. Here's the kicker. The very first real red flag came on a random Thursday night. She came home late, claiming she was at a team dinner. But she smelled like cologne, not hers, not mine, and not the kind that lingers in a restaurant. That was the first time I felt that sick knot in my stomach. I didn't say anything. I swallowed it. Told myself I was paranoid. But deep down, something shifted in me that night. After that night with the cologne, I tried to push the thought out of my head. I convinced myself I was being insecure. But little things started stacking up, and soon it wasn't just in my head anymore. She started picking up new hobbies, randomly. First, it was yoga, then running, then a sudden interest in book clubs. Now, don't get me wrong. I love when a partner has her own thing going on, but these weren't hobbies she was genuinely into. She'd come home in yoga pants, but couldn't tell me a single yoga pose. She said she went running, but her shoes were spotless. And the book club? I asked her what book they were reading, and she straight up said, Deep Work by Cal Newport, I think. Or maybe, The Power of Now. That might sound small, but it stuck with me. I actually read Deep Work a while back when I was trying to cut down on distractions at work, so I tested her. I asked, "Oh, interesting. What do you think about his idea of shallow work versus deep work?" She blinked like a deer in headlights and muttered something about, "Yeah, focus is really important." That's when I knew she was lying. One night I told her, "Hey, why don't I come with you to yoga? Or running? Or even the book club? Could be fun." She immediately got defensive, too defensive. Said she needed her space, and that I was being controlling. That word, controlling, it cut deep. I'd never been called that before. I didn't even realize how she flipped it on me until later. At the time, I backed down. I told myself maybe she was right. Maybe I was being too nosy. But the truth? My gut was screaming that something was off. And then came the night where the lies weren't just sloppy anymore. They were insulting. So, the night everything came crashing down started pretty normally. I cooked us dinner, simple pasta and a bottle of wine. She picked at her food like she wasn't hungry, kept glancing at her phone. At one point, she excused herself to call her mom. 20 minutes went by. I'm sitting there, pasta getting cold, wine untouched, and I just know. Something in me snapped. I got up, walked down the hall, and opened the bedroom door. And there she was, sitting cross-legged on the bed, laughing into the phone. But it wasn't the laugh she uses with her mom. It was that low, flirty laugh I used to think was only mine. When she saw me, her whole face froze. She scrambled to hang up, muttering, "I'll call you back." Then she looked at me with these wide eyes, like I'd caught her with blood on her hands. I asked one question, "Who was that?" She stammered. First, she said it was her mom, then her coworker. Then finally she snapped, "Why are you spying on me?" The audacity almost made me laugh. She was caught red-handed, and somehow I was the villain. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just stared at her and said, "If you lie to me one more time, I'm done." She broke down crying. That ugly, snotty cry. And in between sobs, she admitted it. She'd been seeing someone else. "It's not what you think," she tried to add, which honestly pissed me off more. Like, how many different ways are there for me to think about you cheating? That night, I slept on the couch. My chest felt like someone had caved it in with a hammer. I couldn't close my eyes without replaying every late night, every fake excuse, every fake laugh. But here's the kicker. The betrayal wasn't just the cheating. It was who she was cheating with. The next morning, I couldn't even look at her. I was running on fumes, but I needed answers. So I asked, "Who is he?" At first, she wouldn't say. She just kept repeating, "It doesn't matter, it's over now." But it did matter. It mattered to me, because every lie she had told was tied to this mystery guy. Finally, after I pressed her, she whispered his name, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't some random coworker. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone I knew, someone I actually hung out with. My friend, let's call him Mark. I swear, I almost laughed from the absurdity. Mark had been to our apartment. We'd watched football together, grabbed beers, even helped each other move furniture. He wasn't my best friend, but he was close enough that betrayal hit harder. All those book club nights. That was him. All those runs. Him again. Suddenly, everything lined up. The cologne, the weird excuses, the way she started dodging my questions. What cut the deepest was the fact that he knew me. This wasn't some faceless guy in her office. This was someone who shook my hand, clinked glasses with me, asked me how work was going, while secretly sneaking around with my girlfriend. I remember just standing there in the kitchen, feeling like the floor had been pulled out from under me. I wasn't even angry yet, just numb, like I was watching a movie of my own life, and I couldn't believe the plot twist. And here's where things really spiraled, because it wasn't just her and Mark. There was a whole web of lies waiting to unravel. Once I knew it was Mark, I couldn't sit still. I grabbed my jacket and stormed out before she could even try to explain. I needed air, I needed distance, but mostly I needed the truth. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called another friend of mine, someone who also knew Mark. I didn't give details, I just asked casually, "Hey, have you seen Mark around lately?" And that's when the dam started to crack. My buddy hesitated, too long. Then he said, "Yeah, actually, I've seen him at O'Malley's a couple times. Not alone, though. With, well, I thought you knew." I pressed him. Hard. And he finally admitted he'd seen Mark at the bar multiple times, with my girlfriend. Not holding back. Not hiding in a corner. Sitting right out in the open, laughing, touching, looking like a couple. I felt sick. I mean, they weren't even being discreet. Which meant everyone probably knew. Except me. And that suspicion turned out to be true, because when I confronted another mutual friend later that day, he dropped the hammer. "Dude, I didn't know how to tell you. People have been whispering about it for months. We all thought you knew." Months. Let that sink in. For months, people had seen them together and assumed I was either fine with it or too oblivious to care. I was walking around like a clown, cooking her dinners, planning trips, while half my social circle knew I was being played. That was the moment anger finally hit me. Not just at her, not just at Mark, but at everyone. My so-called friends who didn't even have the decency to pull me aside and say, "Hey man, something's off." And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I found out exactly how far back their betrayal went. I thought this whole thing had been happening for a few weeks, maybe a couple of months at most. But the truth? It stretched way further back. That night, when she finally came out of the bedroom after hours of crying, I pressed her again. "When did this start?" At first, she tried the classic downplay. "It was just once, it didn't mean anything." I called BS immediately. I told her flat out, "I already know it's been going on for months. Don't make this worse by lying again." That's when she broke. She admitted it started almost a year ago. A freaking year. It began when Mark helped her train for running, which explains why her shoes always looked brand new. She wasn't running, she was meeting him. Every excuse, every fake hobby, every late night, work call, it all traced back to him. And then she dropped another bomb. They hadn't just been hooking up. They'd been talking, long, late-night conversations about life, about dreams, about things she apparently couldn't talk to me about. That cut deeper than the physical betrayal. It wasn't just her body she gave away. It was her trust, her secrets, her intimacy. Stuff I thought belonged to us. I remember sitting there, my head in my hands, feeling like my chest was going to cave in. A year of my life wasted on a relationship that was already dead behind my back. A year of lies, fake smiles, and her looking me in the eyes while sneaking out to meet someone I considered a friend. The worst part? She had the nerve to say, "But I still love you." I almost laughed. I almost screamed. Instead, I just stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out. Because if I stayed another second, I knew I'd explode. But here's where it got really twisted. Walking away wasn't the end. Because Mark wasn't done, and neither were my so-called friends. I thought leaving the apartment would give me space to breathe. I drove around aimlessly for a while, parked by the river, just sat there staring at the water. I kept replaying her words, that pathetic, "I still love you." My whole body felt heavy, like I was dragging chains. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. A few minutes later, a text. "We need to talk." It's Mark. I swear my heart stopped for a second. The audacity of this guy. He'd already stolen my girlfriend, my trust, and apparently a whole year of my life. And now he wanted to talk. I didn't respond. But later that night, when I finally dragged myself back to the apartment to grab some stuff, guess who was waiting outside leaning against his car? Yeah, Mark. He had that nervous smirk he always wore, like he was trying to play things off as casual. He started with, "Bro, I know you're mad, but let me explain. I lost it. Not physically. I didn't throw a punch, though every fiber of me wanted to. But I unloaded on him. I told him exactly what I thought of him. How low you have to be to betray someone who trusted you. How disgusting it was to smile in my face while sneaking around with my girlfriend. And his excuse? You won't believe this. He said, "Man, it just happened. We didn't mean for it to go this far." That's what cheaters always say, right? Like their clothes just accidentally fell off. Like a year-long affair was some kind of oopsie. The kicker? He actually had the nerve to say, "I care about her, and I think she cares about me too." Maybe this is just how it was supposed to be. That line, it felt like he'd stabbed me with a knife and then twisted it, slow. I didn't say another word. I just walked past him, went inside, grabbed my bag, and left again. Because if I stayed 1 second longer, I was either going to break down or break his jaw. But what really messed me up was what I learned the next day, because this betrayal wasn't just personal. It was about to spill into places I never expected. I thought I could compartmentalize. You know, deal with the breakup and betrayal at home, keep my professional life separate. But betrayal has a way of seeping into every corner of your life, like a leak you can't plug. The next morning, I dragged myself into work. I hadn't slept, my eyes were swollen, and I was running on caffeine fumes. My boss pulled me aside almost immediately and asked, "You good? You look rough." I brushed it off, said I was fine. But then, like fate was mocking me, I heard Mark's name at work. Here's the thing, Mark didn't just casually know me. He used to work with me. Different department, same company. He left about 6 months ago, but apparently, he still kept in touch with a couple of people there. That wouldn't have been a big deal, except one of my coworkers pulled me aside during lunch and asked, "Hey man, is it true about you?" Girlfriend's name. And Mark? I froze. Word had already gotten out. Turns out, Mark wasn't just sneaking around with her. He was talking about it. To mutual friends. To people who still worked with me. Basically turning my private nightmare into gossip fodder. That was the gut punch I didn't expect. It wasn't just betrayal in my relationship. It was humiliation in my professional circle. Now people at work weren't looking at me the same way. Some avoided eye contact. Some gave me that pitying nod. Others straight up asked me if it was true, like it was some soap opera they were following. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. That night, I sat alone in my car after work and realized this wasn't just about a broken relationship anymore. This was about my dignity, my reputation, my sense of self. And I couldn't just sit back and let them control the narrative. So I decided to take back control. But the way I did it, well, it shocked even me. I hit my breaking point that night in the car. For weeks, I'd been the guy everyone pitied, the guy who didn't know, the guy being whispered about in break rooms. I couldn't take it anymore. So I did something drastic. I wrote everything down. I opened a blank doc and just spilled it all. Dates, excuses, the book club lie, the cologne, the phone call I overheard, her confession about it being almost a year. I even listed the times mutual friends admitted they'd seen them together. It was like building a case file. Cold, methodical, no emotions, just facts. And then I sent it. Not to her, not to Mark, but to my closest circle of friends, the ones who had known us both from the start. No filter, no sugarcoating. Just the truth, written plain as day. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. Honestly, it was for me. I wanted the record straight. I wanted people to know I wasn't clueless, that I wasn't going to sit quietly while they all exchanged whispers behind my back. The fallout was instant. My phone blew up with texts, shock, apologies, a few people claiming they had no idea. Some admitted they'd suspected but didn't know how to bring it up. And one person, this floored me, actually said, "I'm glad you said something, because Mark's been bragging about this for months." Bragging. My so-called friend was out there bragging about sleeping with my girlfriend. That was the final straw. I blocked both of them, her and him. No calls, no texts, nothing. I packed the rest of my stuff and moved into my brother's spare room. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like the first real step toward getting my life back. And here's the kicker. Once I took that step, once I finally cut them off, something happened that I never expected. Blocking her should have been the end. Clean break, no contact. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that cheaters don't always let you move on quietly. A week after I moved into my brother's place, I came home from work and found her waiting outside, sitting on the curb like some tragic movie scene. When she saw me, she jumped up and rushed over, eyes red and puffy. She started with the waterworks. "Please, just hear me out. I made a mistake. I don't want him, I want you. We can fix this." I stood there frozen. Half of me wanted to scream in her face, the other half just wanted her to disappear. I told her flatly, "You had a year to make that choice. You didn't choose me." But she kept pushing. She said Mark was just a distraction, that she was lost, that I was the one she truly loved. She even pulled out the classic manipulation card. "You're my best friend. Don't throw that away." It might have worked on me once, back when I still believed her lies. But not anymore. I told her point blank. Best friends don't betray each other. Lovers don't cheat. You can cry all you want, but us, it's done. That should have been the end of it. But instead of backing down, she snapped. Her tears turned into anger, and she hissed, "You'll regret this. You'll never find someone who knows you like I do." And then, get this, she stormed off, only to show up again 2 days later. This time at my workplace. And that, Reddit, is where things really went nuclear. I honestly didn't think she could top the curbside scene. But apparently, she had other plans. 2 days later, I was at my desk, trying to focus on a report, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there she was, standing in the middle of my office, looking like a storm had blown in. People stopped what they were doing, staring. Some whispered. Some tried not to stare. And she just stared back at me, like she owned the place. She started yelling, not quietly, not softly, yelling. "You think you can just walk away? You're making the biggest mistake of your life. You don't know what you have." I swear, I could feel my face go pale. My coworkers were frozen. My boss looked like he wanted to intervene, but wasn't sure if he should. I tried to calmly say, "This is not the place. Please leave." She scoffed. "Not the place? Where's the place, huh? At your house? At the bar? You've ruined everything already." I could feel the anger rising in me, but also this deep, sinking sadness. Sadness that someone who claimed to love me could cause this much chaos. I asked her one last time to leave, and when she refused, I called security. It was humiliating, embarrassing, but it was also a turning point. That moment made me realize how little control she actually had over me anymore. I couldn't stop what had happened, but I could stop letting her dictate my life. After that day, I made a firm decision. No more calls, no more texts, no more sightings. I wasn't just ending the relationship. I was reclaiming my life. But cutting her off emotionally turned out to be harder than I expected. Once she was finally out of my life, for good, I hoped, the emotional fallout hit me like a freight train. I didn't realize how much of myself I had invested in her until I was left with nothing. Sleep was impossible. Work felt like walking through quicksand. Every song, every smell, every little thing reminded me of her. I'd catch myself reflexively reaching for my phone, hoping she'd text. Of course, she never did, except for a handful of desperate, manipulative messages I ignored. I realized I needed a plan, or I was going to drown in anger and regret. I started small. Morning runs, journaling, calling old friends I'd neglected. I even went back to reading. Deep work, ironically, became my sanctuary. Not for productivity, but for focus, for reclaiming my mind from the chaos she'd caused. Therapy helped too. Talking to someone neutral, someone who wouldn't judge my rage or sadness, made a huge difference. I learned that betrayal isn't just about losing a person. It's about the loss of trust, the loss of identity you built around that relationship. And slowly, I began to notice the small victories. I laughed, AG. A couple of months into my recovery, something completely unexpected happened. I ran into one of my mutual friends, the one who had known about the affair months ago and never told me. We grabbed coffee, and I expected a lot of awkward silence or empty apologies. Instead, he said something that really hit me. You know, man, she was never going to be loyal. I'm not excusing it, but it wasn't about you. It was about her. She needed validation, drama, attention, none of which is your fault. You can't fix people like that. I sat there, stunned. At first, I wanted to argue. At first, I wanted to say, but she loved me. Then I realized the betrayal wasn't about me failing. It was about who she was. And understanding that, finally, fully, was liberating. I spent the rest of the day reflecting. For the first time in months, I didn't feel angry. I felt clear, free, not healed completely, but free from carrying her chaos in my chest. That encounter made me see that the emotional devastation wasn't a punishment. It was a wake-up call. A brutal, messy, painful wake-up call, but one that forced me to grow. And that growth, it became the foundation for my next steps. After that coffee, I knew what I had to do. There was no chance of reconciliation. Not with her, not with Mark, not with the people who had silently watched and whispered. I had to reclaim not just my life, but my sense of self. I blocked her on every platform, deleted old messages, and even asked mutual friends politely to respect my space. It felt extreme, but necessary. Then came the hardest part, forgiving myself. I kept replaying the past, wondering if I had been naive, if I should have seen it sooner. But slowly, I started to accept that trust isn't stupidity. Love isn't weakness. People who betray you reveal who they are, not who you are. I also started making decisions that centered on me, what I wanted, what I needed, and what I wouldn't tolerate. I reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I had abandoned, and even started planning trips just for myself. It wasn't revenge, it was recovery. I realized that cutting someone toxic out doesn't just end a relationship. It creates space for growth, peace, and self-respect. And as much as it hurt, as much as I'd been humiliated and betrayed, I felt like I was finally stepping into the next chapter of my life. Looking back, it still stings. The betrayal, the lies, the humiliation, it all left scars. But I've learned a few things that I wish someone had told me before this mess. Trust your gut. Those first red flags aren't paranoia, they're instinct. I ignored mine, and it cost me a year of my life. Lies reveal character, not your worth. Her betrayal wasn't about me failing. It was about her inability to be honest. Boundaries are survival tools. Cutting toxic people out isn't mean. It's necessary for your mental health. Reclaim your life actively. Hobbies, friends, self-care. Focus on you. Growth doesn't come from dwelling on betrayal. Forgive yourself, not for what they did, but for trusting them in the first place. Loving and trusting someone isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Now, I've started dating again, slowly, cautiously, but with eyes wide open. I'm more selective, more protective of my emotional space, and oddly enough, happier than I've been in years. The pain was brutal, yes, but I'd rather have gone through this mess and learned these lessons than have stayed blind and comfortable in a relationship built on lies. So if you're out there feeling betrayed, humiliated, or crushed, it will hurt. But it's also the start of reclaiming your power, your dignity, and your life. And trust me, you can get there.